again, friends. Welcome to another episode of The Adventures of Abernathy Franklin. When we left Frankie, Natty, and new kid Nikki, they were at the Orion Portal, ready to pop into an intergalactic hookah bar for a little bit of fun. Let's rejoin our trio of Abbies and see what sort of hijinks they can get up to now. Frankie was absolutely spot on about the Orion Portal Spa. Not only did I get excellent rest and relief from my would-be hangover, but I also woke up to find that I'd received several other additional services. A mani-pedi cosmic style, nails on the fingers and toes matching in a lovely blue chrome with metallic glitter that seemed to swirl and move. A fresh haircut, not wildly different than what I came in with, but nicely trimmed and with complimentary styling product that smelled absolutely divine. And unless I was much mistaken, my left collarbone, which in youth I had broken and without medical attention had healed with a bit of a notch in the middle, I guess you could say. Well, once I woke up, that left collarbone was entirely notchless, as if I had never broken it at all. Considering this spa also followed the non-currency structure of many of the other establishments at the Orion Portal, that was one hell of a free spa treatment. Feeling so refreshed, and Frankie seeming to be up for anything, we had made our way to the interdimensional hookah bar on the opposite side of the atrium. Of course, not wishing to gain myself any sort of reputation, dear friends, I will admit that the hookah bar was the first thing I spotted upon our arrival to the Orion Portal. I cannot say whether it is customary among all Abernathy Franklins, but I personally have a habit of taking mental inventory whenever I notice any little boutique, eatery, or den of debauchery that threatens to contain a good time. Mental maps of these locations have often come in handy for me on my travels. The environment as we entered the bar gave me the distinct impression that my good time spidey senses were correct. Rather hot and hazy, and smelling vaguely of what my olfactory senses determined to be nachos, the bar was far more expansive in size than one might have imagined based on the entrance. Much like Doctor Who's TARDIS, or the human body, it was bigger on the inside. From where I stood, however, it became apparent that this hedonistic hangout had several other entry and exit points that were likely connected to entirely other parts of the cosmos. One of these doors, in a south-southeasterly direction from my vantage point, was an archway of vines and flowers that seemed to contain a waterfall. Indeed, as I watched in awe of its glowing beauty, the water seemed to part like a curtain, and through it came two, well, for lack of any better understanding, two garden gnomes. Pointy little red hats, long white beards, couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 feet tall. Skipping, laughing, living garden gnomes. What is she doing? Why would she let those guys get all handsy like that? Nikki was tugging on my shirt sleeve nervously and watching in stunned horror as Frankie carelessly inserted herself into a crowd of humanoid males who were very clearly inebriated and proceeded to get rather handsy herself. "I've only just met Frankie," I replied. "You've known her longer than I have. You tell me what she's up to." Nikki rolled her eyes and sighed. "Whatever it is, she must know what she's doing. I haven't seen anything yet to indicate she doesn't." "Well then, no need to worry. Ah, looks like there's an opening with one of the bartenders." I linked arms again with Nikki. Poor thing did seem so nervous, and guided us towards one of the many circular bar stations. We elbowed in among other beings who were getting drinks, snacks, and who could say what sort of consciousness-enhancing substances to add to their respective hookahs. How do we know what to order? I mean, those look like menus, but I don't know what any of those symbols mean. Nikki was staring at holographic screens above the bar that were covered in rotating symbols. She had a fair point. I wasn't familiar with whatever language that must be either, and didn't have the foggiest idea what options were available. While Frankie clearly had a good deal of experience with far corners of the cosmos, I confess I've confined much of my own timeline hopping to the exploration of planet Earth. Different segments of history or the future, sure, but still very much Earth. I was about to ask the faceless, levitating android behind the bar what type of smokable substances it would recommend for Earth humans when Frankie bounced up behind us. "Hey there, Danny, my man. 3 orders of the usual for me and my new friends. And whatever makes that pink smoke that those Arcturian gals over there got going on." Frankie nodded towards a table of extremely tall women in matching blue robes who were giggling in a cloud of pink smoke. "Oh, and bring us some nachos," Frankie added to Danny the android. "I swear I smelled nachos. Didn't you smell nachos?" she asked as she looked at me. I did smell nachos, just didn't think a place like this would have regular human bar food. I had a fleeting idea that Frankie may be some kind of mind reader, but dismissed it almost immediately. Whether she was or wasn't, I would still very much be happy to indulge in some classic Earth human snacks.
"Will that be all for you, Miss Frankie?"
The android behind the counter that previously had only a smooth, shiny metallic surface where a face ought to have been, now had more of those floating symbols scrolling up it, as if it were a list review of our order. "That's all for now, Danny. What do I owe ya?" Frankie reached into the back pocket of her jeans and pulled out what looked like a thin cigarette case.
"Fair trade is equal to 3. As such."
As Danny the android spoke these words, a new 3D image formed on his face where the order list had been and began to spin slowly. It looked like a gold coin inlaid with sapphire blue jewels arranged in a sort of galaxy shape. Frankie clicked a button-like shape on the side of the thin metal case 4 times. But rather than open like a cigarette case might, the thin case dispensed a coin matching the image on Danny's face, 1 for each time Frankie had clicked the button. Frankie caught the 4 coins dislodged from the case in her free hand, stacked them on the counter like poker chips, and slid them towards Danny. "Have an extra for your trouble, friend. Appreciate you," Frankie said. The coins seemed to electrify in a flash of blue and were suddenly nowhere to be seen.
"Thank you kindly, Miss Frankie. Your order will be ready at your chosen rest location presently."
"Oh, and looks like someone lost their wallet. Might want to add this to your lost and found." Frankie winked at Danny and tossed the metal case at the android's metal torso. Before it reached the android, it dematerialized in an electric blue cloud and was gone.
"Very good, Miss Frankie. Enjoy your forthcoming now moments,"
Danny replied and floated off to attend to another customer. Frankie pushed away from the bar. "Back at you, Danny, my man. This way, ladies. I see someone else I know. What's up, Rosie?" Frankie hailed another android that was seated alone on a very squishy-looking circular couch with a low table in the center of it. Frankie strolled confidently to the cozy spot, stepped up onto the back of the couch cushion with 1 foot, down onto the seat with the other, and then flopped herself down next to the robotic figure she had called Rosie. Nikki and I climbed over the edge and sat across from Rosie and Frankie, and as Danny said it would, our order presently materialized on the table in front of us. A fancy pink glass hookah appeared, with 4 hoses emanating from it, and the base already swimming with Frankie's order of pink, smokable, who knew what. "Care to join us, Rosie?" Frankie asked as she picked up the 2 hoses closest to her and offered one to the android. Rosie had the same basic form of the android Danny who had taken our order, but where Danny had no facial features to speak of, Rosie had a face that made me think of an Earth drag queen. Her skillfully loud eye makeup and luscious sparkling lips had enough dazzle to garner the envy of even the most famous Earth drag queens. I wonder if RuPaul would be open to allowing android contestants on her drag race. Probably already does in some dimension or other.
"Hello, Frankie. Don't mind if I do."
Rosie raised her arm in the direction of the hose Frankie offered, and a liquid silver hand seemed to grow out of it gracefully, as if mimicking Frankie's human shape in order to grasp the mouthpiece. I took up the hoses closest to Nikki and I and handed one off to her. "When in Rome, Nikki Angel," I said. And we all proceeded to empty the hookah of its smoky pink contents and fell into a blissful reverie. Now, friends, from here I will do my best to relate details of our conversation as accurately as I possibly can. However, as you might imagine, under the influence of whatever pink galactic hashish substance Frankie so graciously selected on our behalf, my memory recall from that heightened state may not be as vivid as it might otherwise be if I had been sober. Then again, like many humans, I find sobriety can be offensively dull, so I'll presume most of my listeners to be forgiving in that regard. While this pink substance gave Self, Frankie, and even the android Rosie a lovely, fluffy, relaxed sensation, it seemed to only intensify new kid Nikki's curiosity about her surroundings. Okay, wait. Frankie, you said they don't do money here. So how come you had to pay for this? Are those really nachos? Nikki pointed to the table, where now had appeared a large plate of the most delicious nachos I have ever personally tasted, as well as whatever Frankie's usual was. I can't say that I remember the name of the drink. Apologies, dear friends. As I said, from here, details get a bit fuzzy. But suffice to say, it was a refreshing bubbly liquid with a tart fruity flavor, served in what looked like chemistry beakers with silly straws. And they were somehow magically self-replenishing. In every moment that I would notice my beaker becoming empty, it would automatically become full again. Frankie, who was already helping herself to the massive heap of nachos, held up a finger at Nikki while she finished chewing a mouthful. So, the currency exchange isn't actually required as such, but in places like this, most patrons still have belief structures built around, bartering and currency exchange. Far as I can tell, it's attached to the guilt they have over indulging their desires. So the androids, they're just programmed to ask for whatever each individual considers to be a fair exchange. But you said that was someone's lost wallet. So it wasn't your wallet. Where did you get it? You paid with someone else's money? Nikki really was a new kid at this. Her human morality codes were showing. I, on the other hand, had an epiphany of sorts at these questions. "You duplicitous little pickpocket, you," I said to Frankie. "You were getting all friendly with those dudes at the entrance so you could steal their wallets." I suddenly got a fit of the giggles. "Oh my God," Nikki spurted. "You stole from those guys?" Frankie smiled mischievously for a moment, then shrugged. "I don't think of it as stealing. I provided a service. Attention from a fine bad bitch such as myself has immense value. I was simply compensating myself for a job well done."
That's precisely what I was doing before I terminated my employment,
Rosie piped up. As I'm sure my audience is wondering, somewhere in the proceedings, it did come about how it was that Rosie, a robot presumably incapable of becoming high as organic beings do when smoking plant medicines, was able to partake in our hookah session and feel its effects. Frankie and Rosie both gave some explanation about artificial intelligence having the capacity to become sentient and take on the features of organic life, including being able to get high. I fear that I do not have the conceptual understanding required to relay that definitive explanation to you, my dear listeners. In any case, it was indeed possible for Rosie's consciousness to be altered much the same as ours. Rosie, as it turned out, used to work here at this very hookah bar before becoming a patron herself. She felt that her service to customers should be rewarded, and so she helped herself to a few doses of complimentary company product, as it were. Evidently, once you go the way of interdimensional plant medicine, you never go back. And Rosie never did. She was a free android and could come and go as she wished. So, the ground beef in these nachos, they didn't come from a cow? Nikki was asking Frankie. Nah, so they basically take the particle, the atom, whatever, the composition of the thing that you want, and just organize the atoms so they become the stuff you want to eat. You don't need a cow, you just need something in your consciousness that describes ground beef, and poof, it makes ground beef. Or in this case, nachos. Unable to suppress my own morbid humor in my altered state, I had to ask. So, can they make human meat? Is human on the menu in some parts of the cosmos? Or would a cannibal come here and be able to order cooked stuff of its own DNA atoms or whatever? Frankie thought for a moment. I mean, everything you think of exists somewhere, so probably. Now Frankie got a case of the giggles, but I think it was more at the mortified expression on Nikki's face than it was about the conversation turning to cannibalism. What say you, Rosie? Frankie threw her hand at what would roughly be Rosie's shoulder. Is human on the intergalactic menu?
Not generally. To the rest of the organic cosmos, humans would be considered what you might call poison fruit. Human stress, anxiety, and depression levels make you fatally toxic to almost any other species. Those species that can survive human flesh consumption typically prefer not to partake because you, how do you say it? Taste like shit.
Frankie threw her head back in genuine laughter. Tastes like shit, I bet we do. Nikki seemed somewhat relieved. I guess at least it's good to know nobody wants to eat me. At this, Frankie made a considerably lewd comment that even I find too embarrassing to repeat, but then got quite excited. "Ooh, ladies, we should go to this fourth dimensional fairy brothel I know. The fairies that work there can shapeshift into whatever hot dude or lady, whatever you're into, that you want the most in the moment. And it's totally their highest joy to please you. Natty, if you thought that spa was a good treatment, you gotta try this place." "Okay, no," Nikki said, clearly finding the entire conversation a bit much to be getting on with. "That's where I draw the line. I am not ready for intergalactic sex workers. Nope. I can't deal with it." Even Rosie seemed to find this amusing.
You humans and your sexual hang-ups. Only your species can take the most natural impulses of organic life and turn them into something shameful. It's a wonder you manage to procreate at all.
"Be that as it may," Nikki started. But she didn't finish. She slumped over onto the couch cushions and was promptly out like a light. "I think it's someone else's turn at the spa," I laughed in Frankie's direction. "Okay, let's get y'all in for some rest again then, and while you ladies are freshening up, I'm gonna pop to the fourth dimension and you can judge me all you want." Frankie made an attempt to stand up, wobbled, and flopped back down onto the couch with a giggle. Rosie," she said, "can we ask you for a favor?" Rosie rolled her lovely sparkling eyes and, well, would you call it standing up if she just levitates?
"Yes, I'll transport this one to the spa for you. But you really need to start bringing in versions of you with higher tolerance."
I'm not sure what powers or mechanism Rosie had that allowed her to levitate Nikki, but I stumbled to my feet to follow along for what would be trip number 2 for me to the Orion Spa in one day. As I managed to crawl over the back of the couch again, I looked back to where Frankie was still giggling to herself. Are you going to be okay on your own? I asked, steadying myself with one hand on Rosie's back. Frankie raised her hand to her forehead as if she was saluting me, and then winked and pointed directly at me. I'm always okay, friend. Go on with Rosie. You're in good hands. I will catch you in another now. Hello again, friends. Oh, that Frankie. Don't you just wish you had her confidence? Of course, if you traveled the cosmos as much as she has, you probably would. Thanks for tuning in to yet another adventure with the many Abernathy Franklins. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, share with your friends, and leave a review. Your support earns my eternal gratitude. And if you want to help keep the lights on for me while I create, any little bit goes a long way. Donate to my PayPal, CashApp, or Venmo. All are linked in the description. And if you really want my love and adoration, join my Patreon. Patreon.com/AbernathyFranklin. And let's see just how far we can take this little adventure, shall we? Until next time, much love to all of you, my earthbound and cosmic friends. Wherever you are out there, I hope you're doing well.